I've just watched the Steven Spielberg film, Disclosure Day, which came out in England this afternoon. And I said beforehand it would be a psyop, and my goodness me, that's what it turned out to be. You have this non-human force operating in another dimension of reality, which interpenetrates this one. That structure is anything but benevolent to humanity. It has anything but empathy for humanity. And what this movie does is invert that and puts a, oh no, they're nice really, they just care for us kind of gloss on it, while being presented as a benevolent force that's just come along at the right time to save humanity from itself. What they won't tell you is it's the non-human force that's been manipulating humanity and through the global cult manipulating events to bring about where we are now.
We are not dealing with a simple conspiracy theory or a conventional movie review. We are facing a direct warning about the true purpose of the film everyone is talking about right now. Disclosure Day, the latest major work by Steven Spielberg. While the general public packs movie theaters, eating popcorn and believing they are watching just another science fiction masterpiece, the most sophisticated social engineering machinery in history is executing its checkmate move. Think about it analytically for a second. Is it really a coincidence that the most influential and powerful filmmaker in the history of Hollywood is releasing this movie precisely now? Is it a coincidence that this story appears just as the United States seems to open a door that had been closed for decades, with the Pentagon and the current administration promising to reveal information about UAPs and whatever might be behind them? For those of us who investigate the hidden threads of power, the word coincidence does not exist. What we are witnessing is a masterclass in disinformation, a global smokescreen, a psyop, a massive psychological operation meticulously designed to shape, prime, and domesticate the public mind. Trusting that this openness is a gesture of honesty by the system is naive, to say the least. Perhaps the true objective is to condition the human mind, ensuring that the population willingly assimilates and accepts the plans for a new world order. Today, we are going to connect the dots that the system needs you to keep apart. We are going to break down how Hollywood's benevolence trap, combined with the Pentagon's selective disclosure, synchronizes with historical warnings like that of Werner von Braun and holographic deception technologies like Project Bluebeam. Get ready, because what they show us is what they want us to believe. What they hide would completely change our perception of existence. Hollywood and predictive programming. Let us dive into the core of social engineering. Spielberg's new film is the axis upon which the entire current UFO disclosure agenda revolves. Cinema has never been an isolated element of geopolitics. It is its invisible enforcement arm. While television news broadcasts bombard us with statements from senators and intelligence officials admitting that we are not alone, Hollywood is in charge of providing the emotional framework and the psychological blueprint with which humanity will interpret contact. In Disclosure Day, Spielberg uses his most lethal weapon, empathy. He introduces us to a non-human race that is peaceful, profoundly wise and benevolent, coming to teach us a lesson. The viewer leaves the theater with a heavy heart, feeling compassion and openness toward these visitors. Spielberg himself has stated in recent interviews that his goal was to make the public feel that it is all true and always has been. But deep geopolitical analysis and sources warn us of a total inversion of reality. While the screen manipulates your emotions, the grim alternative reality points to something much darker. A non-human force has been manipulating the threads of history from the shadows, possibly since the very origins of our civilization, and not exactly in a benevolent way. Perhaps the pre-packaged narrative they are selling us goes something like this. Since human beings have become inherently self-destructive, destructive to their own species and the nature surrounding them, these superior beings have no choice but to intervene in earthly affairs to save us from our own annihilation. It sounds beautiful, it sounds messianic, but it is the perfect trap. The architects of conflict and historical control. To understand the magnitude of the deception, we must tear down the myth that humanity is chaotic by pure nature. The system educates us, through school textbooks and mainstream media, in the idea that we are a hopelessly violent and flawed species. But what if the great conflicts, divisions, and wars that have bloodied human history are not biological accidents, but engineered events? The hidden force operating behind the global stage has applied the maxim of divide and conquer for millennia. They finance both sides of a war, they create economic crises, they polarize societies, and they do it because they know that a frightened human being is a controllable human being. They use fear and induced scarcity as tools for human herding. Through a prison-like education system designed for memorization and obedience rather than questioning, and through media outlets acting as propaganda repeaters, they steer us exactly where they want. And within this machinery, Hollywood is the ultimate temple of predictive programming. As researcher Jordan Maxwell explained, this is no coincidence. The term Hollywood comes from the ancient Druid magicians who used Hollywood, sacred wood, to craft their magic wands and cast spells. Today, the industry continues to operate exactly the same way, using the silver screen as a modern wand to hypnotize the masses. It is not just entertainment, it is a hermetic tool for shaping the collective imagination. It is the place where the population's reactions are rehearsed before events occur in real life. Spielberg, specifically, is no ordinary director. He is a high priest of public perception. From Jaws, which altered the collective psyche regarding the ocean, to Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T., he has spent decades building modern alien mythology. He has programmed into our subconscious how contact with the non-human should look, smell, and feel. The identity of the hidden gods, aliens or demons. But having reached this point, we must ask ourselves the most uncomfortable and fundamental question of all. Who are these beings really manipulating history from the shadows? Popular culture has sold us the idea that they are benevolent astronauts from distant galaxies traveling in physical nuts and bolts spaceships. However, the most rigorous and brilliant researchers of the phenomenon, like astrophysicist and computer scientist Jacques Vallée, discovered that this traditional extraterrestrial hypothesis falls apart under scrutiny.
I think one of the interesting things to mention about you is the fact that you were the person that Steven Spielberg modeled a character of a UFO researcher on in his classic movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Your perspective on the UFO issue seems rather unique in the sense that you don't seem to be jumping on the extraterrestrial visitors bandwagon.
That's what was the main point of disagreement with Steven Spielberg. When I met Steven Spielberg, he was about halfway through filming Close Encounters, and we had a long discussion about what UFOs could be. And of course, for him, the main point of the movie was entertainment, and it was appropriate for the UFOs to be extraterrestrial visitors. I think that from my own point of view, I'm going to be very disappointed if UFOs turn out to be nothing more than visitors from another planet, because I think they could be something much more interesting.
Vallée proved this through the analysis of thousands of cases. He demonstrated that the behavior of today's alleged aliens, such as bodily paralysis, nighttime abductions, and consciousness manipulation, is exactly identical to the entities ancient cultures called demons, succubi, elves, or jinns. Perhaps we are not dealing with travelers arriving from distant stars in metallic ships. Perhaps we are facing something far stranger, interdimensional or ultra-terrestrial entities that have coexisted with humanity since the beginning of time. Not hidden in another galaxy, but existing just beyond the limits of our perception. The footprints of their presence and influence are etched in stone throughout human existence. If we examine the tablets of ancient Sumeria, they speak of the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the heavens, hybridized their genetics with humans, and demanded worship. In the sacred texts of Vedic India, Vimanas are described, flying machines piloted by deities that unleashed celestial wars. If we open censored apocryphal texts like the Book of Enoch, the description is staggering. The Watchers, a group of fallen angels, descended to earth to corrupt humanity, teaching them the art of war, sorcery, and metallurgy, thereby creating hybrid bloodlines, the Nephilim. This idea echoes one of the oldest narratives in the Western world, the biblical account of the Fall. It describes how a great rebellion took place in the heavens, and how the fallen angel and those who followed were cast down to earth. From that moment on, they are said to have remained within the material plane, influencing humanity and pulling it away from its deeper spiritual nature. This very reality was denounced nearly 2,000 years ago by the ancient Gnostics. In their manuscripts, recovered at Nag Hammadi, they warned about the Archons, a caste of parasitic interdimensional rulers born from the chaos of the universe. For researchers like David Icke, who has cited the Archons for decades in his work, these beings act as the hidden architects of a mental matrix. Lacking the spark of divine consciousness, they must manipulate our perception to feed on our lowest emotions. Every civilization on the planet, under different names and mythologies, has left a record of the exact same invisible jailers. This unsettling theological connection is not an amateur interpretation. Some circles of alternative research claim that a secretive organization known as the Collins Elite exists within parts of the US military and intelligence community. According to these accounts, the group allegedly played a role in steering or limiting UFO investigations for decades. They did so for a terrifying reason. After analyzing the physical and psychological data of close encounters, they reached the official conclusion that the UAP phenomenon is not extraterrestrial, but literally and energetically demonic. They discovered that these entities feed on human vital energy, especially on the frequencies of fear, trauma, anguish, and bloodshed. Algorithmic polarization and the war of religions. If in the 20th century they controlled the masses through broadcast television, today in 2026 they have perfected the art of division to a microscopic degree through artificial intelligence algorithms. Algorithms are not designed to connect you to the world. They are designed to isolate you in an echo chamber and feed your specific pain points. Social engineers know exactly what you fear. If your data profile shows you fear public insecurity, your feed will be flooded exclusively with videos of violence and chaos. If you fear economic collapse or climate change, that will become your sole digital reality. They polarize you against your fellow humans, fragmenting society into irreconcilable tribes and destroying the social fabric. Why? So that when the peak moment arrives, they can trigger a real conflict in the physical plane using the tension accumulated in the digital sphere. This design leads us directly to what researchers and ancient prophecies from various traditions call the clash of civilizations, or the Great War of religions and ideologies. It is no coincidence that we are seeing rising geopolitical and spiritual tension in the world. The master plan requires the absolute collapse of the old world order. They need to tear down current structures, destroy sovereign economies, and grind down traditional religions through chaos and mutual confrontation. The ultimate goal of this agenda is the imposition of a single world religion under the control of an absolute single government. Historical writings and analysts of hidden geopolitics have unveiled letters and plans, such as the famous correspondence that high-degree Mason Albert Pike sent to revolutionary leader Giuseppe Mazzini in 1871, which detailed the necessity of three major global conflicts. According to this document, the third conflict would be meticulously engineered to pit political Zionism against the leaders of the Islamic world. This would force the rest of the nations to align and fight to the point of absolute physical, mental, economic, and spiritual exhaustion. The plan describes that, by simultaneously destroying traditional beliefs and atheism, humanity would be left for the first time without a compass or direction. Exhausted by chaos and bloodshed, nations would beg for a centralized authority to enforce peace. It would be the perfect stage to fill that void through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, a single global religion disguised as light and unified under a technological narrative, allowing them to govern and herd us much more efficiently and without dissent. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The Great Catalyst and the Last Card. The architects of the system know perfectly well that humanity will not accept a global dictatorship and a single religion overnight. Human beings cling to their identity, their flag, and their ancestral beliefs. For the civilian population to accept the dissolution of their borders and their most basic freedoms, there must be a massive catalyst, an event of such gigantic proportions that it acts as the great driver of change. This catalyst can manifest through two main paths already prepared on the gaming table. The first is a major armed conflict on a global scale, a systemic collapse triggered by the violent clash of civilizations. The second path, and perhaps the most sophisticated, is a grand celestial exhibition, a simulated extraterrestrial contact on a planetary scale. This is where all the pieces of the puzzle fit together perfectly. The Pentagon's disclosures, official statements on the news, and Spielberg's newly released film all point in the same direction. They are preparing us for the final card. Let us recall once again the sworn testimony of Dr. Carol Rosin regarding her mentor, Wernher von Braun. The father of NASA's rocket technology confessed to her on his deathbed that the global elite would play a series of sequential cards to justify total control and the militarization of space. The list was precise. First, the Soviet threat, then international terrorism, next asteroids and rogue nations, and finally, the alien card. Von Braun emphasized a phrase we should engrave into our minds. Carol, remember that the last card is a sham. It is all a lie. To execute this technical sham, Project Bluebeam comes into play. Conceptually devised in the 1990s, it describes the ability to project three-dimensional optical images, gigantic holograms generated by lasers and low-orbit satellites, using the ionosphere itself as a colossal movie screen. Now in 2026, with mega constellations of satellites surrounding every corner of the night sky and visual technologies capable of deceiving the most trained human eye, the technical infrastructure is an operational reality. They would be capable of projecting city-sized spaceships or religious divinities speaking directly to the population's psyche through low-frequency waves. Many will think that talking about holograms in the sky to manipulate the masses is pure science fiction or conspiracy delusion. But historical reality proves that intelligence agencies have been planning exactly this for decades. Let's travel back to the 1960s, at the height of the Cold War.
during the Watergate investigation, it was discovered that there was a plan originated in the White House to surface a submarine off the coast of Cuba and paint the second coming of Christ over the island of Cuba using holograms. Which is well within our technology today. The idea was that since there is a large Catholic population in Cuba, they would be so upset by this vision that this would saturate the communication channels, the telephone system in Cuba, long enough for an invasion to take place.
At this point, and as David Icke himself explains in his research, this does not mean we are alone in the vastness of the cosmos, nor does it mean that all interdimensional beings are evil, or that the universe isn't filled with benevolent civilizations. The cosmos is infinite, but what we must question here is the channel and the emissary. If the alleged revelation and contact come from the very same elites and power structures that have manipulated, subjugated, and deceived us from the shadows for millennia, we can be sure of one thing: whatever comes from their hands does not seek our liberation. The inner rebellion and the hero's journey. Many will think we are facing a bleak scenario, trapped in a matrix with no exit, where we are simple victims of an invisible hierarchy. But the reality is diametrically opposed. Understanding this millennia-old manipulation should not lead us to fear, but to a deeper awakening of consciousness. The greatest possible act of rebellion is to open our eyes, think for ourselves, and elevate our awareness above the systems of control. This is where we reclaim the leading role. We are not slaves to external forces. We are the heroes of our own liberation. We inhabit a dual universe, and that duality may not be a prison, but a fundamental law for our evolution. The Kabbalion sums it up masterfully. Everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Within this polarity, great positive energy currents and negative energy currents constantly coexist and interact. The universe does not impose either one upon us. On the contrary, it is through our consciousness, our focused attention, and our daily actions that we decide which current to join at any given moment. Right there, in that conscious choice, is where our true free will resides. The game consists of learning to navigate these polarities through inner knowledge, through gnosis. It is this knowledge that the elites have tried to keep us away from for millennia, because knowledge liberates. And today, despite the algorithms designed to sow panic and scarcity, millions of souls are awakening. In the same way that we consume resources in order to survive, these so-called interdimensional intelligences would feed on the human emotional field, particularly on our densest vibrations and negative currents, fear, anger, and division. But this does not make us helpless victims. We remain the ones who choose what energy we generate. If we live trapped in fear, we tune into that frequency and become another cog in the system. On the other hand, when we cultivate compassion, discernment, and inner peace, we choose to align with a different current, raising our vibration beyond their supposed range of influence. We become less visible to their networks. We stop feeding the mechanism and begin to recognize ourselves as consciousness. And how do we apply this in our daily lives? Through inner observation and silence. Become the silent witness of your own mind and ask yourself before every stimulus, is what I'm feeling truly mine? Or was it planted? Does this thought set me free, or does it condition me? Turn down the noise of the system, consciously choose what you allow into your inner field, and reclaim your attention. Because reclaiming your attention is reclaiming your power. The next time the world tries to pull you into fear through a new crisis or an alleged official revelation, remember this: what is repeatedly shown is often what is meant to be believed. Truth rarely comes from those who benefit from your distraction or dependence. Do not automatically follow the crowd. Question, observe, Recover your discernment. Ignite your inner spark. That's all for today's video. I hope you found this information useful and enriching. Thank you very much for watching this analysis to the end. See you soon.